is a Bulldog Radio podcast.
The Ferris State Bulldogs have upset the nation's number 2 ranked team. Wide open! Taylor is going to take this one to the house! Touchdown Bulldogs!
Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome back to the Most Valuable Sports Podcast. Brandon Worth, Joe Nagy with you, and it's a great time here. The semester finally over. We've made it to winter break, Christmas, New Year's, and even better, Natty Champs to do so. Boy, what an absolute experience that was, Joe.
Back to back down in Texas, an awesome time for us too, Brandon. I know, especially as fans going down there. I mean, we had a little bit of work to do, but it's kind of the first time that we've been able to experience a game kind of by itself. Being able to just kind of go as fans was awesome, especially being able to watch a national championship go down. What a weekend it was, especially for the players and the fans. Cannot wait to see it. We do have a really cool interview as well coming for you guys. Brandon, who is it?
Yes, it is Jordan Jones. We brought him back here on the show. Not necessarily with us in person. We weren't fortunate enough to get anybody in person, obviously, as football in the longest season of the fall.
When it's a 3.5 month season.
So we figured we could give them some R&R, and coaches obviously out and recruiting. But I was fortunate enough to get a chat with Jordan Jones on his overall thought of the season and the game itself, because he had a really good perspective of it. And I mean, Joe, we watched that game. I mean, everybody dominated that game.
Dude was a dog.
But Jordan definitely showed out in that game as well as everybody else. So we wanted to chat with him, especially for it being his final game, and just getting that overall experience.
Yeah, for sure. So without further ado, we'll swing it to the interview.
Yeah, just start right out of the gate. You guys came in the preseason number 1 ranked team. You successfully defended the title. What were some of the biggest things and those biggest obstacles you guys had overcome to get back to that point and win it?
Some of the biggest obstacles were really just, new dudes had to step into larger roles, like a guy like myself, Caleb Murphy, our D-line. We've been there before. We've done that. We've been playing ball for a minute, but we had new offensive linemen. We had a new DB, Justin Payout. He was a freshman. He came in. One of our senior DBs got hurt. He came in, filled that role, and played it just as perfect as the dude that was playing before him. As you know, Gulk did his thing with Malik out until Malik got back. Our old linemen, they had to get better every game, and that's exactly what they did. And it was at a point where they didn't give up sacks for 3 games in the playoffs, So those were some of the obstacles that new dudes are trying to fit in. Our biggest strength was, honestly, is our defense. Our defense, dominant from start to finish. Majority of every game besides that first TV game when we kind of let up at the end. Then we got a great coaching staff. Our defensive coaches, Coach Chester Smith, Coach Tony Anise, Coach Hodge, Coach Concerta. They did great with us all year. I can say this, there was never a game we went into that we were not prepared as a defense to just straight up dominate. And I have to give credit to the coaches. Our offensive scout team, they did great all year. There was dudes that just got better during scout team and kept getting better to where they just knew what they had to do to help us win. So those are some of the biggest things that we can attest on that just kept us strong and ready to go.
Absolutely. Then you guys used a dominant first half similar to the 21 victory against Valdosta. What was the feeling like going into the locker room and having that 27-point lead once again on the biggest stage?
We like T.A. said it in one of his interviews, he was just like, we won another half of football, we're national champions. And honestly, we were very confident going into the locker room. Like, man, we're dominating. They can't run the ball on us. They can't throw the ball on us. They got the Harlan Hill winner. He's getting hit every play. So we were very confident. The night before, I was with Caleb Murphy. And, man, he was mad that he didn't get that award. I'm like, Murph, don't even worry about it, man. We're gonna go hit this dog so many times. Make it seem like he shouldn't even be on the field with us. And that's exactly what we did. I mean, our defense lights out. So we were confident. On defense, we were confident. Our offense was rolling. Special teams, they were kicking the ball. We had a couple good returns. Marcus Taylor, he took one really far. We were all rolling on the three sides of football. So And at halftime, we were winning. We knew we were winning at halftime. We knew we were winning when we beat GV in the quarterfinals. Once we won that, we were like, man, we're about to steamroll these other two teams. And that's exactly what we did.
For sure, and you mentioned the GV game and then like the 21 Valdosta Championship and as well as West Florida in the semifinals. Those are the last 3 losses you guys have had in the last 4 years, and now you took all those teams out in a revenge style. What does that feel to get those wins for some of those guys, especially the seniors from those last year and 2 years ago, and able to put a W against those opponents?
Yeah, that was so great. I was a part of that 2019. I was a part of the 2018 loss against Valdosta, the 2019 loss against West Florida, as well as that first GV loss. And, when we lose, it's like we're not supposed to lose. So, and it's never that we lose. It's never that, like, when we lose, we got beat. It's we beat ourselves. So we just knew for all 3 of those games, when we got to play them again, is that only team that can beat us is us, and we were able to just power through those teams every time we saw them. When we saw Valdosta that second time in 21, we just knew we were going to steamroll them from the get-go, just because we had that in our head already. West Florida this year, they gave us a good first half, but at the same time, we were beating ourselves in the first half on the defense side of the ball. We had a penalty. We had a misplay on that big, long touchdown, just a bad read, and then they had a 3-point field goal. And other than that, we played a pretty well-rounded defensive football game. And then lastly against GV, we don't like GV, so we had to. we just had to. And that game was a good game too. On defense, we were letting up some stuff early, but then we just at halftime. Oh man, that locker room at halftime, everybody was going crazy. I was going crazy. Everybody was going crazy. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then everybody just rose up, and we're like, man, they're done scoring. So the only way they scored was on that tip interception, and they got inside the 1. And if you can't score from 1 yard out, you're a bad football program. So they got that extra lucky touchdown. But other than that, yeah, revenge is sweet. It's very sweet, and I'm proud that we got all 3 of those games back, and I'm glad that we're back-to-back national champions.
Absolutely. One more question for you, Jordan. Now, everybody, I'm sure, around the world of football, especially Division II football, knows who Ferris State is, know they're back-to-back champions, but there's a question probably ringing in any other coaches or programs' mind. What does it take to be back-to-back champions?
Yeah, what it takes is that everybody has to be bought in. So in 2018, when we lost, everybody was bought in that year, and we just lost the game. In 2019, everybody was bought in that year. We just lost the game. And then COVID year, everybody was bought in 2020. Even during COVID, we were working out. They shut our weight room down. They shut everything down. And we had teammates that had a home with a nice-sized backyard. We took the weights from the weight room, put them in that backyard, and we were all bought in, working out every day until we were able to work out in a weight room again. So everybody was bought in that year, which led to 2021. And we had these seniors, they were bought in, and they kept everybody up. And so we won that way. And then 2022, we were like, okay. At first, it was a rocky start. I felt like everybody was bought in, but there were some people, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of different characters, and a lot of different people in one room. So we're like, man, we can do it again, but we're going to have to fight. And Coach used to tell you that. We just had to fight. So we just kept fighting week in, week out, getting better. And by the time we just played until a time where we were just like, man, nobody can stop us. We just kept playing until we felt like nobody can stop us, and that's what happened. And I feel like everybody on the team, they love each other, they care for each other. People have different opinions on our team, and people just respect it because they see the work that we all put in together. And that's it, man. Ferris State has been a great program to me. This is my last year. I'm a senior, and every year I just felt like we could win it all. It just happened to be these last 2, but in 2018 and 2019, those teams might have been better than the 2021 and 2022 teams that even won. But yeah, I can't complain. Being a back-to-back champ is nice. Playing for Coach Neese and all the coaches is nice. All our teammates were great for my time at Fairs. So that's what it's about. It's about the people within the organization, especially the players and coaches. Those were the most important. And if the players and coaches are brought in together, it's unbeatable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. I appreciate the time, brother. Once again, congrats. I can't say it enough.
Thank you, B. I appreciate you, man. Happy holidays to you too, man.
Happy holidays. See ya.
Once again, huge thanks for Jordan to coming back on the show, especially over phone call, to be able to take some time, especially off the high of winning a national championship. We really appreciate the time that he took out of his day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you really got to hear Jordan, as far as like his story coming really through Ferris over the time here. We had him on the show a couple years ago to chat about his journey into football. And that was a really cool conversation. And just seeing it come to fruition now as national champion, 2-time national champions for a lot of these guys is super cool. And really just the road to get there. I mean, going really through 2 heartbreaking losses in 18 and 19 right into COVID, and really just not having the season all together to put it back and be able to really get that revenge mode for a lot of those guys. But really coming 2021, 2022, it was a mission from the get-go. And you could just hear from what Jordan was saying, literally bringing weights out into the backyard to literally get to this point. It's all the work that they put in. They've made this process the best it could be for them to be successful. And now we're seeing it come to fruition, and you just can't be happier for them for all the work that they've put in. And they certainly have put together 2 of the greatest teams we've seen in Division II history. Honestly, for this back-to-back, it's the greatest margin that I found. And statistically, as far as final score wise, it's the greatest back-to-back spread of margin from one team winning back-to-back in Division II history. And almost, I believe, throughout all 3 divisions, there was, I think, a D3 team that prevented that from being published in my article. But I can't remember what the school was called. If it was like John Carroll or something.
Yeah, some random.
You don't
some random,
took my stat, John Carroll. But no, it just shows you how dominant they were. I mean, we saw it on Saturday. They flat out dominated that game. No question about it. Dudes
were dogs. Big time win. It was 41-14 against Colorado Mines. This game, especially a lot of people I saw, especially with, pregame of the game on ESPN, and a lot of people were talking about it. They thought it was going to be a shootout. I did too. I thought it was going to be more of a 33-30 type of game where it was going to come down to the wire. But I think our defense really showed out as the best in all of college football here, because when you come against a Colorado Mines team who is coming in as the highest scoring offense of D2 that year. I mean, you look at, I think they're averaging 45 points a game or something like that.
It was up there. They look good.
And then for them to play a Shepherd team the week before, keep the train rolling. John Matoa coming off, Harlan Hill Award winner. We'll talk about that too, Brandon. I know we both got something to say about that. But for us to shut down a Harlan Hill Award winner and the highest scoring offense to just 24 total yards in the first half, you're kidding me. That's insane. And for us to really show out that well, and especially our defense to really come behind Caleb and stuff as he was runner-up with that, I think that really showed our resilience, especially when you look at earlier in the year. I mean, snapped a 45-game winning streak when we lost to Grand Valley. Coming off that game, I think that was the turning point of the year, because I think we just kind of expected to win at that point. I mean, it was a close game against Saginaw Valley. We didn't play super well against Michigan Tech the following week, but we still got the W, and then we were able to just keep on winning and keep on playing really solid. I mean, you look at the last 6 games of the year from Davenport up until West Florida, I think, before the national championship, margin of victories were pretty high. I'd say other than maybe 2 or 3. So we really showed up against this team. And I think especially against a Mines team who was pretty hungry at the start, I think we really showed out why we are back-to-back and why we were so heavily favored in this game.
Yeah, especially in the postseason. A quote comes to mind from Santana Moss when he was at the University of Miami. And those that have seen the U doc, the 30 for 30, probably know this quote pretty well. And if you don't, you probably know it already. Big time players make big time plays in big time games. And that just speaks volumes. I think this team was built for big games. This team is built for big games. And I think that is what really stood out throughout the whole playoffs. I'll say it again. This team is built for big games. And that's what you just saw over and over again, because you look at all these big games they had down the stretch in the postseason. They had a really I don't want to disrespect Davenport, but it wasn't necessary. We got to play them twice, obviously, so we had a better look at them the second time than the first time. And Davenport's a really good team, but they just aren't at our caliber yet, right?
No.
So we took care of them in the first round. Then we go to the second round against Pitt State, which should they be in our region? We'll chat about that later as well in the episode. Of course, we'll get that full recap, but they were a really good team. And it just came down to...
I feel like if they beat us, they could have won the national championship.
They could have. Anybody in our region could have won the national championship, and those, especially the top 3 seeded teams, us, GV, and Pittsburgh State, honestly.
It's just thankful that it was 25, 30 mile an hour winds that day that pushed that kickoff course.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty wild. But, I mean, you look at how they battled throughout that entire second half, and being able to get that, I mean, Eddie Jewett ends up sending us through to the regional final to Allendale on that late field goal, but just making enough plays down the stretch offensively won us that game. The defense locked up against Pitt State when they had the momentum there early in the second half. They shut them down, and that wasn't necessarily granted, it was from the scheme, but it was the plays, especially in Grand Valley game, being able to get that interception at late in the game. I mean, that takes an individual effort from there, forcing Sintel to pick that ball off, because there's a whole crew of there that could have had their hands on it. Sintel made the play. Obviously, Malik ended up scoring that diving touchdown there in the second half. That was absolutely huge for the program, as Joe might mention.
Yes, sir.
Going on in there. I had to make sure I slip that in there, of course, but might have had somebody pay me to do that on the show, but we'll talk about that later. But no, you're really coming down to that West Florida game too, where first half, it was deadlocked, but then the defense came out and they wreaked havoc on Pee Wee Jarrett in that backfield for the Argonauts, and that's really what got him through. That defensive line showed up. They made the big plays when they needed to most. And then obviously, I mean, what better situation to go into a national championship, but having that confidence that they can beat anybody, because they had taken out everybody in their path. And then that just left Colorado Mines, which they had ended up being the number 2 team in the nation. And we flat out dominated them 27-0 at halftime, pick 6 by Sidney McLeod to really kind of, that felt like, I talked to a lot of people that watched that game. They're following that game. They said it was halftime and it was over. I know there's some people tell. I don't know. Like, I keep telling this to people. I don't know what you do as a coach at halftime in a national championship game when you're down 27-0. And you're getting flat out dominated. You can't move the football. Yeah. You're moving the football all over you, which granted, we didn't, I guess we wouldn't.
I feel like
we moved the ball, we didn't score.
We moved the ball, I'd say. I mean, Marcus Taylor had that big run.
We didn't capitalize for TDs.
I would say, we had to settle for, excuse me, we had to settle for field goals, but I mean, Marcus Taylor had a big run. Malik was kind of chucking around as a pretty surprising mover.
Yeah.
He hit Des Libertus over
Brady
the middle.
Rose
He hit
was
Brady
awesome.
Rose. Brady Rose had that massive run where he's just scooting up both sides of the field.
He can
and
still play quarterback.
The 54-yard pass over I think that's late in the second.
Yeah, to CJ.
Second to CJ.
That was cool.
That was also one where he ended up on a field goal. So that was kind of the only thing that you could really say was kind of the struggle point for us. But
it's just settling for field goals.
The thing is I was watching the replay back after we got back to our Airbnb down in Texas, and we were at the second half, and we scored that, touchdown to when CJ had that kind of end around or the option, and the option from Malik basically goes, Anyways, scores that one. And then we pin Mines back to their 15 on the kick because they do a little fair catch or something like that. I forget what it was. And then it was funny because the announcers were like, they need a miracle to do something right here to get back in this game. They need to be able to figure something out before halftime. As soon as that happens, off the hands of the receiver, falls right into Sydney's hands, and he takes it to the corner of the end zone. That was, to be able to be in the stands for that was just the craziest amount of energy that I've ever seen. I knew at that point it was over, because when you're Harlan Hill Award winner who has thrown 2-3 interceptions all year, has already chucked one for a pick 6 in this game, especially when you're down, 14 to or 20 to 0 at that point, and then you go and throw a pick 6. That's just tough, and you really can't come back from it too much. But it was just insane, especially to see how well our defense played again in this game, as well as our offense. I know a lot of people were kind of speculating how well they'd play, because Mines was a great offense too. They were coming off of 8 sacks against Tyson Badgett, who is a guy who's known to be able to get it away, scramble, and kind of negate some of those, negate some off from excuse me, I'm talking way too fast for what I'm trying to say.
We're so excited, man.
I know. Tyson Bagent is known for being able to kind of get out of the pocket a little bit and throw the ball away and kind of really get away from those sacks and stuff like that. He'll take the incomplete pass over the sack.
Right.
But for them to be able to get 8 and then as well as a scoop and score to be able to do that, they were coming off a pretty big game. But for our offensive line to really shut that down and give Malik options to, not only get the ball off quick, but to be able to scramble, get some of those big runs, that was huge for the program. Because you look at it, that was kind of the main game changer because you really didn't see Malik too much kind of be able to get a lot of passes off in the start of the year. And then for us to really evolve and play really well after that, to be able to get some of those offensive drives where we get some passes in there too. I think that's what was the big difference was we didn't really stay really one-dimensional like we have been in the playoffs.
Yeah, and we didn't have 400 yards rushing like we did against Valdosta State. But I mean, hey, if it
ain't broke, don't fix it.
There you go. But I think when you looked at this game, I think the offensive line, I'm glad you pointed them out, Joe, because I think they deserved a lot of credit because this was a part of the team that I think a lot of people had question marks with. They lost a lot of that leadership last year with Pasquale and Obeid leaving. Obviously, they still had Sealer, but a lot of new guys in there and a lot of younger guys as well. So you were looking at that offensive line and you'd seen them have a little bit of struggles, and especially against a Mines team that is actually ahead of us overall in sacks on the season, which is hard to believe that there was a team ahead of us in that category. We were second, Mines was first, but we put up 6 sacks defensively against them. But what was more important, we only gave up 2. I think that was the biggest part of the game because when you saw it, when Malik had time and that offense was able to get clean routes, we're able to let plays develop. That's what got things open. And you really saw it from the first drive, even being able to run the ball very well, which, I mean, Marcus Taylor deserves so much credit for what he did over the last 3 games of the season, playing as the primary running back for this team. And you just saw, he looked like he had been there the whole year. He looked so comfortable back there running the football. And it's kind of a shame. I know they talked to him in the post-game press conference when I was there. And I know somebody asked a question that was just kind of along the lines of like, Marcus, do you wish you would have played the whole year running back? And he's like, it's all Godspeed at the end of the day, but man, I would have loved to have a couple more. So and that just tells you how much he loved playing at that position, and he looked so good at it. I think he finished with 103 yards rushing as well as that. I think he had a 30-yard catch as well.
Yeah.
So at 130.
Right over the middle too. It was pretty solid.
Yeah, so we had about 130 yards of total offense. I think Brady was about the same as well as his passing play to CJ Jefferson as well. But I think you just look at a lot of these guys overall and just the amount of grit that they showed, the ability to really put a lot of the naysayers to sleep a little bit, because when you looked at this team on paper, defensively, they had gotten a lot better. Like defensively, were good last year. They played really well in the title game, but they were on a whole nother level this year. And our offense, like, no disrespect, but it was a little weaker. We heard a couple of the guys saying that on the show. I know like Malik was saying that to us here earlier on the last couple episodes, that they knew their offense wasn't necessarily that good. I think Caleb said the same thing in the post-game press conference, was each unit was so complementary to each other. Like we look back at a lot of these games where you kind of looked back at the results earlier, Joe, in some of those notable games of some days the offense really just wasn't finding a good rhythm. Pittsburgh State was probably the primary example, 17-14 game, but the defense stepped up in a huge way, right? And there was some games where the defense was a little bit flustered going on in that first half against West Florida a little bit at the end there, which was a little uncharacteristic from them. But them being able to really bounce back and the offense able to take over was so huge going in, especially that early second half, to set the tone and eventually win that game. But I think the biggest thing was defensively this year, that unit knew that the offense carried them a little bit last year, right? Now they returned the favor. They knew the offense was going to be a little weaker. They took the torch and they played defense first. Coach Anise said it multiple times at a lot of these press conferences, was their offense relied on their defense. Not saying necessarily they were putting it all one dimension on their defense, but their defense was what helped them have confidence in their offense, especially with some of the troubles that they had earlier on this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at it, it's really weird too, because when you see a national championship team from one year and you say, wow, they lost all their offensive line, they lost their quarterback who was their main offensive guy, and you lost 2 or 3 receivers, and then you lost 2 of your first string and second string running backs. When you look at a team that's lost that much on a team that was so offense heavy last year, and I mean, we say so offense heavy, our defense was still elite, but really that's what kind of won us a lot of our games, especially when we had, it was what, a 275 to like 58 margin of victory in the postseason or something like that.
Pretty insane.
Yeah, it was a pretty insane one. You look at that, you say, there's no way these teams are going to be able to win a national championship. It doesn't matter who it is. But to be able to flip the script and go to a defensive-heavy team to where our defense was scoring touchdowns, our defense was holding teams. I mean, look at Colorado Mines. They had more yards lost than they had yards gained in the first half.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
And to be able to see how much the defense stepped up this year, as well as the offense being able to develop and just get better with each game, it was just a recipe for success. I will be honest with you. When we lost, or when we were like close to Saginaw Valley, I was like, this is not a team that can win the national championship. Like we'll make the playoffs for sure, but we could go out first, second round easy. But I think when we lost to Grand Valley and the fire that set under so many guys, and to be able to see, especially after that loss, and to look at the guys on the sideline, you knew that, okay, they are not losing. It doesn't matter if we play Grand Valley in the postseason. It doesn't matter who it is. We're going to roll through everybody. And of course, it was close games and stuff like that. But to be able to show the resiliency and to be able to show out and say, like, yeah, GLIAC is the best conference for football right now. Our region was the one, whoever won this region was going to be able to make it out and win the national championship. To be able to do that against good teams like West Florida, Colorado Mines, Grand Valley State, Pitt State, you look at the final season rankings for the AFCA Coaches Poll, Ferris State number 1. Who else did we beat? Colorado Mines was number 2. We beat Grand Valley. They're number 3. We beat West Florida. They're number 4. We beat Pitt State. They're number 5. You look at number 20 at Davenport. We beat them. So all, what was it, 5 out of 6 of the teams that we beat in the
6 out of the 7 teams in Super Region 3 were in the top 10 in the country in the AFCA.
That's insane.
Because Northwest Missouri was 8 and Ouachita was 10.
That's insane.
Insanity. We'll get to that redraft here in a minute here on our thoughts on that. But some things like I think what you mentioned, Joe, I think was spot on of a lot of the perception of fans, especially after the Grand Valley game, was like, this team's good, but are they good enough to make it all the way again? I don't know.
Because you saw our offensive line was struggling that game.
Yeah, and really the game before that, it's those dang Cardinals. They gave us fits
every year,
again.
man, every year.
Saginaw really put us in a tight spot, and we were able to come back and win that game, fortunately, despite all the wrenches they threw at us. Michigan Tech, we came out a little slow in that game, and we're really to put it all together there until the very end to sneak out of that one after the Grand Valley game. So it didn't look too good, and a lot of us were like, oh, it's not looking good. Then we beat Davenport. It's like, oh, yeah, we're still pretty good. Wayne State, yep, we clean house. And, oh, we crushed Davenport. All right, here's a true test. Here come the Gorillas. Now what are we going to do? Beat them. Okay, rematch time. You know the boys want this. They went and got it. And you're like, okay, here we go. Now we're back in where we want to be. And then West Florida, and obviously Mines took care of themselves. But it was just a fantastic season all the way around. Some stats to highlight here that I was looking over here as we were prepping for this episode. The largest total yards gained in a game, Joe. Do you want to guess what game it was?
For us or for our opponents?
For us. Offensive.
Like the most total offensive yards we had?
Yeah. Which game was it?
Say,
it's probably one you're not thinking.
out of the whole season?
Out of the whole season, yeah.
I have a feeling it's Saginaw.
No, it is Northern Michigan. You know how many we got in that game?
Wasn't it like 450 or something like that?
609 yards of offense we had against the Wildcats in this.
Oh, yeah, because Carson had like 5 touchdowns. He had like 250 in the first half.
That's right. That is one of the craziest things that popped to my mind was like, holy cow, we put up 600 yards of offense. And now I looked over and I was like, I got to highlight that. We only, like Waldorf, we only had 450 and we scored 69 points. But Northern, we had 609 yards, put up 56 points. So that was the highest outcome.
That's crazy, man.
Overall in total yards, passing yards on the season. Believe it or not, it was week 1.
Really?
In Central Washington, we put up 351 yards passing that game.
Yeah, because what happened was we had like an 80-yard pass right to start off the game.
Yes, you're right, to Xavier Wade. That's correct.
Isn't that I feel like it's crazy because, Xavier Wade went out early in the season. Childress went out halfway through. And like we were missing a lot of our wide receivers. But to be able to win so many games with, to be honest, our 4th, 5th, 6th string wide receivers, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you see guys who are a little bit inexperienced. You kind of saw that in some of the games where it was a 3rd and long. We would, I think it was against Davenport. It was against West Florida. It was. I think it was Des Libertus. He did like a little short 8-yard slant or something like that. And he was supposed to go like past the first down, but he like cut too early and was like kind of running before the first down. He ended up catching it, but then it was like 4th and short.
Yeah.
So we had to punt it off. So it was just kind of like, it kind of happened a lot with all of our other receivers with just little mental mistakes like that. And I think that's the thing is once you have those guys who are younger and more inexperienced, you just need to get that. But especially for us being able to play those guys in those high pressure games like playoffs against Pitt State, Grand Valley, and all those teams, it's very valuable because next year when you have those guys who are coming in their second year, I mean, Xavier's graduating, Childress is done, I think. I mean, you have Tyrese Hunt Thompson who's moving into his junior or senior year of eligibility. I think he's pretty close to being, because he's in our grade for academic wise.
Yeah.
So he's going to be done pretty soon. But you have a lot of these guys who came up clutch and be able to, get a lot of playing time when they haven't really been able to, in the preseason as well as early in the season anyways. It could be scary for what we're going to be able to do, especially with a young offensive line. That's going to be scary. Defense, we're losing a lot of guys, but I think we'll really be able to step that up with our offensive ability. And also you have a lot of guys who can learn from these crazy players like Jordan, like Ian, like Caleb. So a lot of these things, a lot of people are going to be speculating of how we're going to be able to do next year, but I think we're going to be just okay, or we're going to be okay in the right hands.
I think we will. I think the depth on this team really showed throughout the entirety of the season that this program was built to have everybody ready at any given time and anybody to fill in for any given spot. I think that was huge. Back to stats here. Highest rushing total, Joe. Where do you think this game came from? Offensively.
It's got to be...
This was a road game. I'll give you that. It's actually one of your favorite games. Oh, I might have gave too much.
One of my favorite games are the best ones.
Well, it's not one of your
Was it Wayne State?
Yes.
I was going to say, it's got to be the favorite video is what it was.
I know where you're going with that. Yeah. 330 yards we put on the Warriors in that snow game, if you remember correctly. 40, I believe we won that game 40-14.
Best video that Will's produced.
Yeah, so shout out to Will if you want
who knows? After this national championship video, that's probably going to be insane too. I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for this one.
Here's one that I think you'll probably know the answer to pretty quickly, but I want to see if you can have your memory like a steel trap.
Yeah.
Highest number of penalty yards obtained by the offense.
Oh, I feel like I know which one it is.
It's
got to be either Grand Valley or Michigan Tech.
Neither. Neither. Michigan Tech was second.
Well, one was the first?
Saginaw Valley on the road.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Remember how many penalty yards
we had? Like close to 200, didn't we?
203 penalty yards in that game.
Jeez, man.
We had the ball for 30 minutes.
I remember that because they kept
seconds.
because they kept on like penalizing stupid stuff. There was like it
was a very touchy game. I want to say
the rest were dumb. Yeah. I'll be honest. The rest were stupid.
I'm going to double check here just to be sure here. But if I remember correctly, there was a total number of, yes, here it is. Ready for this? Brace yourself. Buckle your seatbelt. 27 combined penalties. Wait for it. 313 penalty yards combined.
Well, I'll be honest.
In that game.
I was watching that game and that was just a dumpster fire because there was a lot of calls where I was like, that makes no sense. And that was both ways.
Both ways.
The reffing was just so bad in general in that game. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was pretty insane here. I think defensively, the best effort that we had against the run, ironically, it gave up 4 yards of rushing to Mines in that first. Giving up 4 yards of rushing in the entire game is a feat by itself. But that was technically not the best we've done against the run all season. You want to guess what game that was, Joe? Defensively against the run.
Maybe West Florida?
No. It was I'll give you a hint.
Was it a regular season game? It
was a regular season game, and it was at home. And it was in the stretch that we were talking about.
Where we were struggling?
The 3 games of struggles, yes. So you got 3 options
Finley.
Here. No, it was not. It was Michigan Tech. You know they had, you ready for this? 14 rush attempts for negative 1.9 yards per carry. They finished with negative 26 rushing yards in that game.
We did or Tech did?
Well, Tech did. We did defensively against.
Dang, dude.
Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
Yeah. That's
ridiculous.
We held them when they ran the ball, they finished farther back than they started every time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at in the championship game, there was one where Mines got the ball on like R30 and gave it, or on like R28 and had to give it away on the 30.
Yeah.
Or something, because they tried to go for it on 4th down and they messed it up.
Yeah.
Their Harlan Hill winner is just so good.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that here. I know, Joe, you're just irking at it to follow that. What do you think was the best defensive effort against total yards?
Total yards?
Yes. You might pick up on this.
I gotta say, quick. I'm feeling it's Pitt State.
It was not Pitt State.
Dang, I'm terrible at this.
No, there was a lot of games that were pretty close. Pitt State
I'm trying to go off like points wise.
217.
Was it Davenport the second time?
The second time we played Davenport, it was a total number. I'm pulling up here. I wish they had the game log for defense on the statistics sheet rather than just offense. Davenport, that's a close guess. 131. I believe that's the third lowest. The correct answer was Waldorf.
Oh,
which makes sense.
Well,
right now
they only had 3 points.
We gave up 93 yards of total offense, but a close second was Lenoir-Rhyne on the road in North Carolina against that ranked team.
5 points.
5 points and only 94 yards of offense in that game. Boy, that was something else.
That was a tough.
That was a close one in the rushing one as well. We only held up to 16 yards rushing. So, I mean, that defense was just
because I think
insane,
Caleb Murphy had like 5
fine.
sacks that game or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just that was
this year. This year in general was probably my favorite working for athletics. I feel like, especially for working football, because you just saw incredible football all the time. Even when our offense was kind of slacking, you just saw very solid the whole way through, which was a lot of fun to be able to work and be able to see up in the press box. But man, I'll tell you what, being able to be a fan down in Texas and just kind of experiencing that, especially like tailgating, having some fun. Shout out to the alumni club for like really setting a really cool atmosphere at the tailgate, because
that was cool.
They had free food. They had like space heaters. They had TVs going on with College Game Day and stuff like that. It was super cool. You know, it was just a really awesome experience, especially as a fan wise. And to be able to go down to McKinney, I mean, that stadium is insane, especially for it being like a high school stadium down there. But I'll tell you what, it's ridiculous to be able to see what goes down there, especially with, you know, how big football is down in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple final stats here before we get into the Harlan Hill as well as the regional redrafts here. I thought this was very interesting. Did we score more points this year at home points per game or away, you think, Joe? It was pretty close.
Like, let me do a quick little look-see.
Neutral obviously was the highest, but that doesn't count.
I feel like, does this count with playoffs? Or no playoffs?
Yes, playoffs count.
Well, definitely playoffs then. It's got to be.
So you think we scored more at home or on the road?
I don't know, because then you have the Waldorf game.
This is tough because it's really
Is it
close.
really close?
It's really close.
I'm going to go home. No, away.
Final answer?
Home.
Can
away.
You lock it in for me?
Away.
36.3 home, 34.8. So you're correct. Good job.
Yay.
More points scored on the road this season. The most overall by month was September. 44 points per game in our 3 contests there, as well as obviously more wins or more points and wins than losses. But I thought one thing was also interesting. We had, I believe, a total of 18 interceptions. 10 of them were at home. As opposed to 6 on the road and 2 neutral. So that was definitely a home sighting there. In sacks, we actually had more sacks at home, but I believe per average with 6 away games, 28 sacks, as well as 8 and 32. We actually had more sacks per game on the road this year, believe it or not, than at home. So that's kind of an interesting stat too, as well. And we also had more sacks, I believe overall in the month of November in those 4 games than we did in the 5 games of October, 3 in September, or 3 in December. So November, when we really needed it, defense really showed up and we took it from there. So those are some fun stats for you. I figured we could share those. Some player stats here before we get into the rest of it. Malik did very well this season, 114 of 183. That is a 62.3% completion percentage.
Not bad.
Just over 1,500 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, a 139 efficiency rating as well. I believe we had a couple other guys with some nice campaigns as well, throwing the football. Golker had 701 yards. Evan Cummins, believe it or not, 704 before he had his injury early on in the season. They combined for 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, about a 144-ish average efficiency rating. So that was pretty cool. And as well, Brady Rose, 251 efficiency rating at the quarterback spot, 1 of 2, 48 yards. So, hey, that's pretty good.
Jeez.
Leading and rushing this season for the Dogs was Carson Golker, believe it or not, 882 yards. He averaged 58.8 per game, 31 touchdowns he finished
Can
with.
you believe that?
31 tutties.
Can you believe, dude?
We had how many games?
Could you imagine?
15?
15? Dude, that's 2 a game. Could you imagine what that's like? Especially, he comes in, he's like, hey, you're going to be 3rd in the depth chart. Of course, you might even be 4th on the depth chart because you got Malik, Evan, Jesse, and him, right? He comes into this
still a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the last season
That's
out
what
of
I'm
all
saying.
of them.
That's what I'm saying. You come into this season and you're expecting like, okay, I might be able to get in a few, like maybe 2-3 touchdowns to keep it, you know, Like, I'm having a good time against some of these bad teams. I'm not expecting to get in a lot. Second game, what is it? Second game he came in, or third game or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
He didn't even play the first game much because it was just Evan and Malik.
Yeah, I think first game he was really a prominent factor. I think I remember was Lenore Ryan.
Yeah, and then after that, it's just like the guy was the goal line specialist because actually that was Evan. But then especially when he got injured, it's like, hey, we're going to call you up. You're going to be our runner because you're a 6'3", 220-pound monster of a man.
Yeah.
So why don't you just go after it? And then the rest was history. I mean, to be able to do that in 14 games to get 31 touchdowns, that's insane.
That is
especially as a freshman who just comes in and just say, I'll just do my job, whatever's needed.
Yeah.
Because you can make the argument like, well, most of them are 2, 3 yard, 4 yard, less than 5 yard rushing touchdowns, but he had probably 5, 6, 7 that were like 15, 20 yards probably.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's
I just couldn't imagine that just being like, oh yeah. And then at the end of the year, getting a 3-piece, getting a hat trick in the national championship game.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that?
I mean, I thought Vanderlaan was a touchdown machine, and Gulker broke his mark, I believe, by 6. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
He has to set a record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. Indeed. I'm going to look that up.
No, I think that is correct. I think that was
rushing touchdown record D2 football.
It'd be very interesting to see what that comes up with. Oh, we got the NCAA.org here.
National Collegiate something or other.
That is a one heck of a document. I'm sorry for all those that aren't watching the stream that's not being produced.
Okay, this is 72 pages. I don't know if we'll find this. We're just on that. Individual records, number 2.
Yep. So you go to page 2.
All right. Most plays by Fred.
Most yards gained.
Most yards gained.
Might have to go down a little farther.
Where is this at? There, it's a really well-made document. I just can't see it.
Most rushes by quarterback was
Jason Vanderlaan first. He got 1,010
in his career, Carson had 187 overall throughout this season. So if he just,
I think that means yards, right?
With less than half of a snap share in comparison, I mean that could be up to 350.
Is that just over? I'm trying to look at the year thing. I'm not trying to look at the overall.
Yeah, you're looking at single season. While you find that, I'll go through the rest of them.
You go crazy here.
Marcus Taylor, 116 carries, 773 yards, 3 touchdowns for him. CJ Jefferson had 380 yards on the ground. Malik had 209. James Kobe had 192, as well as Evan Cummins with 178. Zamir Knighton with 166. And Brady Rose had 115 for the notable, as well as Amari O'Brien had 104.
Gulker led it all this year with 31. He was 4 more than the second guy. As 27. A freshman, that's crazy. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
seniors
players were seniors and juniors.
Yikes.
The next freshman on the list was all the way down at tied for 11, Chavon Wright of Charleston. And he only had 17. Could you doubled him? That? That's insane, dude. That's
absolutely
crazy.
Bonkers there. Now, you can see
that is wild.
A couple of those notable names on there. TJ Cole, dominant running back for Wichita Baptist. He was one of the reasons that offense was so lethal. He only had 26.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
I mean, this guy only played 11 games, but I mean, I think that's because they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, he probably could have had more. I mean, that's crazy. Carson Gulker had a fantastic year, and that having that security on the goal line certainly brought a lot of it. Receiving for the Dogs, the leader in yards this year was a really close one between Tyrese and CJ. It was Hunt Thompson with 714 yards, 4 touchdowns on 39 catches. Jefferson, 710 yards, 58 catches for 2 TDs. Marcus Taylor added 430, as well as Brady Rose with 293. Brandon Childress with 281, as well as 195 from Des Libertis, 184 from Mario Bryan, 169 in the 2 games for Xavier Wade, for leading out the receiving crew for the Bulldogs. Leading tight end was Mason Pline. We didn't actually use our tight ends that much this year. No. He did have 6 yards on 2 catches, but certainly notable for the blocking that they had up front for the offensive line. I think certainly is worth it. Eddie Jewett, he can do it. He was absolutely electric this year. 8 of 13 on field goal attempts. It might not seem as good, but granted, a couple of those were in literally some of the worst weather games you've ever seen. He was 62 of 66 on extra points, 94%, 86 points on the season. That's pretty darn impressive, if you ask me as well. We only had 53 punts this year. From Quentin Beck, only 63 total. Our opponents had 107 punts. So doubling up defensively to force more punts than you have by 2 That's pretty impressive. So
Yeah.
almost 2,000 yards as well from Quentin Beck punting the football.
That's crazy.
And only 53. I mean, I'm not a math
That's
major. That's
impressive,
almost
man.
40 yards a punt. That's pretty solid.
impressive.
It's pretty solid. Return touchdowns overall on the season. Actually didn't have any, unfortunately.
We had one, but he got called back.
That is true. Deion Small, he led us with the returns, 504 yards on returns, as well as I believe we also had CJ Jefferson that took a couple returns. Marcus had a couple returns as well. And defensively, this is where the numbers get really fun here. The leaders overall, I believe, defensively, as I pull up the sheet here real quick, just to make sure, total tackles on the season was Caleb Murphy, 25 and a half sacks. Let me just take a second to digest that.
25
and a half sacks.
in 14 games.
25 and a half in 15 games. Insane. He also had 3 forced fumbles as well as a pass breakup and 42 tackles solo as well as 51 assists. Sintel had 76 total tackles as well as Connor Neer with 66, Major Denman with 50, Justin Payout with 47, Nick Thomas 39 as well as 38 from Ian Hall, 37 from Jordan Jones, Sidney McLeod with 36, Olero Oladipo with 33, Javon Bayless with 33 to lead the Dogs, as well as sack leaders. We mentioned Murph, Leray, 9.5 from him, 8 from Ian Hall, 6.5 there from Jordan Jones, as well as tackles for loss. It was Murph with 39 tackles for loss. Are you kidding me? That guy was in the backfield and brought your running back or quarterback down for negative yardage almost 3 times a game. That's very scary.
That's wild, man.
Yikes. Leray had 14.5, Jordan Jones 12.5, as well as Ian Hall with 11.5, Connor Neer with 10.5. I mean, that's just absolutely insane what those guys did up front. 5 interceptions led the year. Vincent Cooley. I mean, he was fantastic there. He had 5 interceptions.
5. I thought you said 5 total. I was like,
no, 5 total. On the entire season. Jacarvis Alexander had 3, as well as Sidney McLeod with 3. Sintel had 2. Bayless, Dedman, Payout, Jamil Thomas before he got injured, as well as McCormick all had 1. And fumble recoveries. A lot of guys with 1. Nobody with multiple here. Childress, actually, ironically, Brandon Childress had a fumble recovery. I thought that was funny.
Really?
Travis Miracle had 1, as well as Tavon Hughes, Nick Thomas, Connor Neer, L'Oreal Oladipo, Javon Bayless, Vincent Cooley. Forced fumbles. Caleb Murphy had 3. As well as almost everybody on that list also had a forced fumble outside of Childress, and I believe you can substitute him for Jordan Jones. That was the only change between those two. So I thought that was pretty cool. Leader in pass breakups, 10 was Vincent Cooley, Jacarvis Alexander with 9, as well as Sidney McLeod with 9, Sintel with 6, Justin Payout with 5, as well as Jamil Thomas with 5 before he went down. 8 Kilpatrick also added 4 from there. So, I mean, that was really cool to see all the way around. Just a notable one here before we go. Mason Pline, as well as Dawson Booker, Cody Savo, Jordan Jones all had a block field goal or a block punt. So I thought that was really cool to mention because special teams, of course, Joe, certainly matters. So
yes, sir.
Anyway, let's get right to it here. Why did they screw up, Joe, by giving Mr. Matoka the Harlan Hill?
What more do you have to do as a defensive player to be able to win the Harlan Hill? Because, I mean, here's the thing about it. I am a big proponent of not giving out those big rewards until the end of the season, because you look at Matoka, they gave it to him after the game. If you look at this game, you would have just given it to Caleb Murphy because especially when you look at who Mines played throughout the season and who we had to play throughout the season. The GLIAC was no doubt the best conference for college football on the D2 level. Most of the time in the year, we had at least 3 or 4 teams ranked. I mean, it was always us in Grand Valley. You had Davenport scooting in there, as well as who was the 4th one for a hot sec? There's a 4th one. I know that.
Wait, which ones did you just mention?
It was Davenport, Grand Valley, and us and then Saginaw was also ranked.
Yeah.
And then when you look at what he was able to do against those teams, was lights out. Matoka, though, Colorado School Mines, I think they only played 3 or 4 ranked teams, 5 ranked, 3. It was like 3 or 4. And against those ranked teams, they didn't play super good. You played Angelo State at the start of the year. You played Grand Valley State at the start of the year. Didn't have the greatest games. And then you come back, you play a lot of bad teams after that. You go into it. I mean, you play CSU Pueblo, you get a good game. But when you play against a lot of those ranked teams, you don't have a whole lot of big wins, especially, I mean, later on in the year when they got to the when they got to the spot where they were able to really get a groove in. They were really starting to put some points on the board. But when you look at the teams that we beat and how well Caleb Murphy played against those teams like Grand Valley, as well as, later on in the season, they kind of played some teams where I feel like you could have really saw some similarities between the two. I feel like there was no doubt where you had to give it to Caleb Murphy, because if you look at it, the guy had 25.5 sacks against most of the time getting double teamed. And you look at that compared to Matoka. I mean, you play a team like Shepherd, who has a terrible defense in the semifinal or in the playoff finals. And then you play Angelo State, who has a good defense, but they're nowhere near as good as our defensive front. And then you play Minnesota State, who's known for their offense. I mean, you look at it, it was a 48-45. It was a shootout. You don't play against the best defenses in the country like you have been able to against us, as well as you don't play against he had not played against the best defensive line. Caleb Murphy had to play against some of the best offensive lines in the country. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only thing that I have a problem with.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, this is kind of my perspective here. Obviously, as us Ferris fans, we might seem a little biased here. I'm going to try to not be biased in this situation. John Matoka was a fantastic quarterback. I mean, he finished the year almost 300 average yards per game, 52 touchdowns. Absolutely an incredible mark, 178 rating. He was fantastic. Dyson Badgett was also very good. He was definitely probably second in the category, especially at quarterback. I think they'd probably put him third overall in that overall voting, just based on it looked like how they went about it. But there was a couple of games here where he was really kind of struggling in some of these big games. Angelo State, the first time, he went 13-26, only 167 yards. He was struggling to throw the football a little bit. Alfie has mentioned, Joe, that he really played a couple of those okay teams along the way. I mean, they bumped into the CSU Pueblo. He had a really good game there. He played really well down the stretch. And I think that's what really got him the award, was the performance he had in the playoffs. When they played Pueblo, he had 4 touchdowns. When they played Minnesota State, 4 touchdowns, 307 yards. Angelo State didn't have as many yards, but he still had 4 touchdowns. And then Shepherd, he blows up. Obviously, is a phenomenal game, 20-34, 371, 5 touchdowns. He was incredible. So I think the committee looked at those last couple of games, and the reason why I think that was wrong was because when you watched film and you watched the game, Murph didn't have necessarily the same amount of stats, and he didn't have that statistical impact that, for say, John Matoka had. Obviously, everything he does is recorded as a quarterback. That's just the nature of what football is right now. Murph impact set up everybody else around him because he was that good, because they had to double and triple team him. I'm not joking. You can go back and watch the film. There were plays.
Watch his Mines game. He got triple teamed like 10 times.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. And I think the biggest thing was he was dropping back into coverage as well. So not necessarily, that's not going to be the most direct way to get you stats outside of tackles in that situation, which, by the way, if you run at Caleb Murphy, no, you're turning back and you're running the other way, first of all. But second of all, in those situations, he was taking away the quarterback run, which set up them to throw the football. Mines did. And keep in mind, Matoka wasn't that great completion-wise against Ferris State. He only had 22 of 38 completions, so just over 50% there, as well as 2 interceptions. So you look at that in that scenario, which, by the way, I mean, he absolutely had a phenomenal game, especially in that West Florida game, getting that forced fumble later in the game off a double team. But you look at where he was in comparison to all the years past when you had a defensive player in consideration. He was a next level above it. It wasn't close. He had the most sacks out of anybody ever in football. NCAA record of all levels. He broke Terrell Suggs' record. Yeah, that guy was in the NFL. You know Terrell Suggs from, of course, the Baltimore Ravens wreaking havoc with Ray Lewis. That kind of Terrell Suggs. And he moved that mark up even higher. And it's just, I don't know. I felt really bad for him because the fact is, like, that's what he said in the press conference, because somebody asked the question in that room about how did you feel when they gave it to Matoka. He said, well, Matoka's a great quarterback and all, but I just don't know what else I could have did. Like, if I was going to win the award, I don't know what else. Do you want 30 sacks? Do you want more interceptions and fumbles? I don't know, because I put together the best campaign I thought I possibly could have. By the way, that guy still had 5 or 6 sacks in a game, I believe, if I remember correctly. So I just don't know what else of a resume he could have put together, because, for granted, he had to play some of those games in limited statistical prominence because they were having to put so much attention on him. If he was the best player, that's what's got to be in consideration rather than just statistics. That's just my point of view. Because when you look at statistics, that's where it looked like they gave the edge to Matoka, especially at the end of the year. But I think the committee might have forgot that, he wasn't necessarily as involved because obviously they had to put every single person in front of him that they possibly could.
Yeah. I think the one problem too is it's just become such, even with just the Heisman in general and like Harlan Hill, it's become such a quarterback heavy award.
Agreed.
That
That's the Heisman too.
you can't that you can't really make a case for running backs, defensive players, wide receivers unless they have the greatest season ever had. Quarterbacks, they can have a great, Matoka, he led the nation with passing yards and he was a great quarterback. But when you look at Tyson Badgett, he's the best quarterback that's ever played D2 football. The guy turned down D1 offers to stay at the D2 level because he was just for the program at Shepherd. But when you look at that, Matoka didn't have the best quarterback performance of a quarterback throughout his whole career or just this season. That belonged to Badgett. You only give it to him because he beat Badgett and that team in the semifinal. That's why if you just waited until after this game and you realize that, okay, he's actually playing a legit defense for the first time in probably the whole season that is good on all facets. You have the best secondary. You have the best defensive line. You have incredible linebackers. At that point, and like you said, Brandon, Caleb is so good that they had to let Jordan Jones just basically go one-on-one. That's a problem. They had to let Ian Hall go one-on-one. That's a problem. Laredo Oladipo, problem. Connor Neer, problem. So it's like when you have a guy as influential to a defensive success as Caleb Murphy, you can't say that we're just going to go off statistics. You can't say that, he won because he had a better performance. That's just statistics-wise. If you look at every single game that was played, if you look at Northern, Grand Valley, if you look at Davenport, if you look at West Florida, if you look at Michigan Tech, all those games, he was getting double, triple teamed the whole time. And you know what that left for? Everybody else to be successful. So yeah, he might have not gotten a sack in every game, or he might not have gotten multiple. But what you can look at is how many does everybody else get when he has a bad game, in quotation marks, statistics wise. Because when you look at a game, he has never had a bad game. If you look at it statistically, yeah, he might not have gotten a sack. But the guy just has so much influence on the defense and how well that they can play, especially for offensive lines and the game plan. When you have offenses that are specifically saying double team or triple team this guy specifically, not the D1 transfer from Illinois, not the guy who's Jordan Jones, who's 6 foot, 290 pounds of full muscle, not Connor Neer, who's a workhorse in the backfield of the defensive backfield. That's just insane to me how you can say, yeah, let's give it to this kid who's a 5'10" quarterback who's probably not even going to make it to the next level.
Yeah. And I think one other thing that what happened with the committee, and I hate to say it this way because I don't really know what else the way to say it. We kind of screwed ourselves for Caleb Murphy. You know why? Our defense was too good.
Yeah.
Everybody in our defense was so good. They were like, because of course, when you have the situation, when you're putting
I guarantee nobody watched more games than two.
Yeah. When you're looking at an MVP, right? Most valuable player. Does most valuable player say the best player overall out of everybody? Or is it the player that is the most valuable that if you took them away, that team wouldn't be where they're at right now? That seems like what they almost did with Murph, because that defense was so darn good, as you mentioned, all those names, and we didn't even bring up the secondary, which, by the way, is also
Sidney
nasty.
McLeod, problem. Jarvis.
Lots of problems.
Lots of problems all over the place.
Where John Matoka, I think, has the better impact overall on that offense, because if they don't have John Matoka, their offense isn't as lethal. And I think that also came into consideration as well. So that kind of hurt us a little bit.
That's the same thing, though, because, if you just took Caleb Murphy out, then they would have to – it would kind of be – you wouldn't see the same thing, because then the double and triple teams that were left on – not saying that, all of our other guys would just struggle, because we'd still be able to get through and get sacks. But I feel like our defensive impact of forcing teams to go 3 and out – you look at Colorado Mines, the first 5 possessions, they went 3 and out.
Yeah.
They didn't have a first down till the second half.
Right.
Which is crazy. And if you look at that, if you took Caleb Murphy away, we still would have had the defensive powerhouse that we had.
Yeah.
But you probably would have seen them get a couple more first downs and flirt a little bit more with the end zone than they did. But yeah, like you said, Brandon, if with Caleb Murphy's ability on defense and how much offenses had to change their schemes to basically stop him from going, then it let a lot more area for all the other guys on defense to really flourish and have great seasons. And that's the only reason I think why they really just were like, yeah, you're not going to get the Harlan Hill, because the impact that you have is a lot less, in quotations, than John Matoka's, which is little hogwash, if you ask me.
Yeah, you know what he said though. 2 of these is much better than one of those trophies. So
he can keep the Harlan Hill.
I'll give him that, especially with the championship ring. And I think he got even better honor winning the Ted Hendricks Award just recently this week as the nation's top defensive end, regardless of level. Yes, he beat Division I guys. This was an award that was won by major names. Aiden Hutchinson, for all those Michigan fans, he was the winner from last year, as well as some other guys on the list that received this award. I mean, Terrell Suggs, as we mentioned earlier, Lamar Woodley, vintage Michigan football fans, Jadeveon Clowney, oh, you probably know who that is. Yeah. Chase Young, oh, you might know who that is. Murph was in that conversation. That's how good he was. And I think that's really what comes to light, especially. He's a first-team All-American as well. Zach Sealer, second-team All-American, so congrats to him as well. I'm sure there'll be more awards coming out as well as the season concludes. But finishing out this Natty-centered episode, there's a lot of controversy going on around how the bracket was put together. And I know Coach Anise brought this up in many different platforms. There might need to be a realignment soon. So we figured we could talk about the show, especially with the future of this team. Obviously going to be reloading, getting a lot of prominent players back for next season. But I think with next season, I think there's got to be a different road for some of these teams to get there. And I'm not trying to say we're making our road easier, but some of these teams, frankly, that we played in Region 3 were title contender teams and deserve to have a chance. But it just geographically, some of it just doesn't make sense, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this a few episodes ago, kind of when the whole bracket came out and we were kind of looking through just on both sides of everywhere. Our bracket, when you look at it, it feels like it got gerrymandered or something, because a lot of the teams that are in this bracket are not close to each other and should be playing other teams, and other teams in other sides of the bracket should be playing us because they're closer in the region. And when you look at the word region, I mean, you should be playing teams that are in a close vicinity. See, I mean, if you look at us, I mean, we talked about this already, like I said, but you have Northwest Missouri State, Ouachita Baptist, who's also in Missouri.
No, right?
Arkansas, and you have Pitt State, who is in Kansas. The only ones who make sense to be in this region right now are us, Grand Valley, UIndy, and Davenport. And that leaves 3 teams to be able to kind of move around.
I agree.
If you look at what is it, Super Region 2? With
I think it's
the
4.
one that Mines came out of.
4.
Mines had to play Minnesota State. Of course, they hosted, so it was whatever. But they had to play Minnesota State, who's obviously from Minnesota. They had Bemidji State, who's also from Minnesota. Winona State, who's from Minnesota. That's a 5-state or 3 or 4 state gap that you have to travel just in playoffs. You don't even have to do that for the semifinals or the championship game. If you just moved Bemidji, Winona, and Minnesota State up to our region and swap that out with Pitt State, Northwest Missouri, and Ouachita Baptist, that would make more sense. And then you look over to the Super Region 2, I think this is, or Super Region 1.
I think
I can't even tell. They don't got labels on this.
Yeah,
so
I think that would be 2 with
it's a shot in the dark.
West Florida. That's when West Florida came out.
This one kind of makes sense because it's more of like the South or the Southeast teams, but you still have teams that are in, Mississippi, Arkansas, and stuff like that who could really move around. So it begs the question, how would you kind of change this to be able to make it so it makes a lot more sense when it comes to traveling for a lot of these teams, because the only one that really makes sense is the one that Shepherd came out of.
Yeah.
They didn't have to travel very
Region
far.
1, yeah, the Northeast, basically.
I mean, luckily for us, we were higher ranked, so we didn't have to travel that far either. I mean, the only time we had to travel was an hour south of Grand Valley. But Pitt State, you're on a 14-hour bus ride to go play a game. That's tough. You have Northwest Missouri State who had to travel all the way up to Allendale. That's a tough drive to make. So if you really want to have some really solid football and really good competition, I feel like you got to really take a look at these regions and make a big change.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, the first thing that comes to mind, an idea of changes, like Joe just mentioned, it would be to flip Pittsburgh State with Ouachita Baptist and Northwest Missouri State down into Region 4, and up in Region 3 would be Bemidji, Winona, as well as Minnesota State. That one would make sense, right? I think that would counterbalance it a little bit. It might not be perfect, but I think it would be at least a little bit better. I mean, we could compare it with rankings if we wanted to as well, but I think it would definitely even it out, at least just a little bit. I think another one too is you mentioned having I think Ouachita's like a little bit of probably the most outlier out of this. Cause I mean, it's not necessarily like they're in Arkansas, like the other teams are still in the Midwest, in Missouri as well. So you kind of have that, you can make that argument a little bit. Arkansas is out of the way. Like, Arkansas, I know they're in the upper portion.
we made the drive to Little Rock to go to Texas.
Yeah.
That was 12 hours ago
Something
to
like
get
that,
there.
yeah.
12, 13.
Yeah, like it's in Arkansas. I know it's like up in that north and that area, but you still have these other teams that are down in Region 4, I believe it is, that are playing against Angelo. They're playing against these teams in the regular season. So why are they not in that situation playing those teams again in the postseason? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think like there would be a chance to put them down there as well, as maybe move a couple other teams around potentially. They could even slide over to Region 2. That might be a little bit too far for them, but I think that three-way swap I think makes the most sense because I think that'll make it. I think it'll still make Region 4 maybe a little bit tougher than 3, but that's just based on this 1 year, right? Minnesota's always been in that conversation. They were in the national semifinals in 19 when West Florida beat them after we lost them in the semis. So they're always a team that's in conversation. Northwest Missouri State is one of the most stout programs in Division 2. They got the most championships for a reason. They're always in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then you got another team, of course, with Pittsburgh State, MIAA, always a powerhouse.
Yeah, they're 23-time conference champions. I mean, 4 or 5-time national champions.
Yeah, so I mean, they're the longest 10-year program in Division 2 altogether. So they've
Grand
had a
Valley,
lot of great success.
4-time champions in the early 2000s.
Yeah, so I think there's still enough. Bemidji's always a quality program. Minnesota State's always been good.
Minnesota State was at the national championship two championships ago.
Yeah, Winona
2019.
Yeah, Winona was kind of the outlier in this situation just because they weren't really ranked in that situation.
Yeah, they just got in because of the bid.
So yeah, when you look at strict rankings, you're swapping a 3 as well as a 4 and probably the unseeded team out of there. I know they were ranked, I think, like near the 24,
same thing, 3, 4 and unseeded,
25. Yeah. So it would be 3, 4 and unseeded again. But I think if you had those 3 teams play against each other, I would almost bet on our region teams over in all 3 of those games. Well, that's where it looks crazy. But at the end of the day, it's just like, do you want to have 6 out of the 10 teams in one region again? If you do, okay, fine. But just know we're going to know what region the champion's going to come out of every year.
It's also completely unfair to the teams in that region. Because it's like you're playing the hardest games right off the bat. You're playing basically a championship game
in round 2.
Right. This was Ferris versus Pitt State was a championship game.
Caliber
Grand Valley versus Northwest Missouri State. Low scoring championship caliber game.
Those 2 teams.
Grand Valley was a team who was putting up 50 points a game for the past 5 weeks before that game. To be able to hold the 13 against the Northwest Missouri team who is unranked unranked in the playoffs. I think they were 10.
Oh,
they were in the top 10.
They were lower than that.
Lower than that?
They finished at 10th, but I think in the regular polls they were somewhere around
Other than that, championship level game. West versus Grand Valley, championship level game. Indiana versus Shepherd in their regional final, 48-13 Shepherd. You look at Colorado School of Mines, 42-24 over Angelo State for that was
a championship caliber game.
It was, but kind of not.
When you compare them, if you compare them, no.
If you compare it to what we had to go through, no. West Florida versus Wingate. It was a Cinderella, but also not a championship level.
No, but would you take Benedict in that situation over any of our top 3 seeds?
Absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't either.
Absolutely not.
The polls can take care of that by themselves.
And then you really didn't see super great football. I mean, after that, you didn't really see super great football. I feel like from a good, solid, hard-nosed game of football after that until you got out of our thing. So I think it just begs the question, how are you going to do it? Are you going to do it where it's just a cold cut 1-24? And you're just going to
reseed the whole thing.
And just reseed the whole thing where
all
one
28
plays
teams,
one plays 24, 2 plays 23, and that type of deal, and then it just kind of goes on along the list. And that's how you do it.
Idea.
That might not be a bad idea because you can't say, "Oh, the region's messed up, and that's the reason why we lost was because our region is chock full of good teams." You're playing the worst team in the playoffs, and you're just kind of going back and forth with that.
It would make travel a little gross, though.
But then you can't. Then it's just like if I was on the committee and I made that decision, I'd just be like, "Well, do you want a stacked region?" Because then you kind of have to toss that around. But I'd say you just got to figure out a set regions for states. That's max 2-3 states for travel. That's however many you got to go. Because if we play Minnesota State, you just got to go through Wisconsin and then you're in Michigan.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, it's another 9-hour drive through that UP and then go down. But it's a lot better than Northwest Missouri State having to go from Missouri through Iowa through Illinois, through Indiana, then to Michigan, all the way up to Allendale. And it's a lot better for Pittsburgh, who's from Nebraska, basically doing the same thing.
Right, exactly. We're not trying to make Ferris State's road easier. That's not what we're doing.
It's more just making it so it. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. You're on the same thought process as I am. We're giving these other teams that are championship caliber teams the fair advantage that they should have in this situation in comparison to unbalanced throughout the other brackets. That's what we're saying.
What's your dream Final Four? If this was like a reseed, what would you want to have in the Final
Grand
Four?
Valley Ferris in that title game? Duh.
That would have been sick.
No, I'm just kidding. That would have been awesome. If keeping in the same brackets or the top 4 teams.
Like if it was just like a Cinderella thing, like
I could pick 4
random teams out of the whole the whole playoffs to be in the top 4.
Okay, well, of course, Ferris.
Yep.
I would love Grand Valley on the other side just because it obviously bring intrigue. I would say I would think that there would be a very interesting game to see. I wouldn't put Shepherd in there. No disrespect to Shepherd, but I think they're too offensive heavy. Then they get exposed they have the last 2 years in the semifinal.
Yeah,
game.
Exactly.
I think if you look at some of the other teams in the bottom portion of the bracket, I think I would have loved to see Angelo make it because I think defensively that team was very underrated. I think they would have been fantastic to watch. And I think really when you look at what Delta State did, I think that would have been a really good team to see in the final. They just really slipped up against West Florida, and West Florida took care of the rest, and they would have made it. And I would argue that they could have possibly gave a run over there. They would have probably still would have probably played us in that situation. I think if you still did the reseeding, so they might have made it to semi, but they're a really good team too. I would have loved to see what they would have did. So I guess there you go. I would take Angelo State with Delta State as well as us in Grand Valley. But if I had to pick one from the top quadrant, I would probably pick Indiana University of Pennsylvania, maybe. I think they were really good. I think they were a really good underranked team. I wouldn't have probably taken Ashland or Assumption. I don't think those teams are powerful enough, as you could see in the bracket as it ended up. But those would have been probably the 4 teams I would have picked there, as I just picked 5. But you know the drift. So
I would have liked to see kind of the same. I would like to see us, Grand Valley. I would have put Pitt State in School of Mines. Because what I would like to see was probably keep Pitt State with us on one side and then see a rematch from the start of the year with Mines and Grand Valley.
That would have been
I feel like that would have been a sick one.
I like that.
That obviously that wouldn't have ever happened, but that would have been cool just to see Grand Valley like at the start or something like that. It kind of, if we lost and Grand Valley played Colorado School of Mines, you know how cool that would have been?
Yeah.
And if Mines upset Grand Valley,
that would
beat Grand Valley to revenge the loss from the first game of the year, that would have been wild.
Storybook. Or Grand Valley takes care of business again, and then oh my gosh, that would be a really
further
cool.
Proves, yeah.
I would have loved to also see. I would have loved to see Northwest Missouri State play Pitt State again.
I would have liked that too.
I would have loved to see that again.
That would have been a cool game.
That would have been a really good game in the playoffs. I think that would have been really fun as well. And I would have loved to play Grand Valley, of course, because those games are always fun, too much fun, regardless of outcome. Just environment. I would have been environment. It's amazing.
I would have been interested to see like a Angelo State versus West Florida, how that would have gone.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. You would have seen a lot of, you would see Angelo State really schematically trying to dissect that West Florida offense. And that would have been very interesting to watch. So there's some hypotheticals. Hopefully we get this all straightened out so we have a level playing field going into next year.
Be sick.
But hey, if not, prove we can do it. We can do it again. Congrats. 2022 Ferris State football national champions, boys. You did it. So incredibly proud of you guys. And it's been an honor to cover you as well. It's
Absolutely.
been a great road all the way through.
Who would have thought, especially when we came to this school in 2019, that we'd experience 2 national championships for football and going down to Texas? I would have never thought that.
No, I would have been like,
stuff.
And I'm going to have to take my own trip to Texas one day. But it turns out the boys did it. I got a paid trip there. And I can't thank them. 2 paid trips. That's true.
Yes, sir.
We both got 2 paid trips.
I got mine partially paid for. I didn't take the fan bus.
That's true. You probably made the smart decision on that.
Yeah, that's true. I did get a per diem though. So
that is nice. So shout out to the Torch for helping us make that dream really come to life. Never thought I'd cover 2 national championships, let alone 1, let alone 1 win, let alone 2 wins.
Yeah, that's insane.
Can't say enough thank yous to all those guys. Thanks for Jordan Jones coming on the show with that phone interview. We appreciate him coming on to give his 2 cents on the game as well. It's a great season all the way around for Gridiron fans all over the state of Michigan cheering on Ferris State football. It's been fun. So that's going to do it for the wrap up here of the national championship episode. We wish you the rest of the good year. More episodes on deck here soon. But it's going to be great, Joe. Can't wait for a new year of content, and it's just going to be a great time to be a Ferris State Bulldog when we turn into 2023.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.